deep into winning international development contracts. Specifically, how smaller organizations can kind of break into that market.
Okay.
And we're really going to be focusing on the power of subcontracting opportunities for growth. We've got a ton of resources to unpack articles, real-world advice, even some insights from the Canadian government. So get ready for I think, some really eye-opening strategies.
Yeah, international development contracting, it's a really interesting field, it's multifaceted. I mean, you need that technical expertise for sure, but also understanding like the global political landscape. It's about strategic alliances. And of course, you got to master that art of crafting a winning proposal.
So let's unpack all of that. Curtis Merriweather, he's a White House recognized government contracting expert. He had some advice that I found kind of surprising at first. He was really stressing the importance of building relationships with elected officials. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does Congress have to do with, projects overseas?
Right. Well, Merriweather calls it top cover. And essentially, I mean, you see federal regulations and that political influence, it often does reach far beyond our borders. And that impacts subcontractors and overseas operations as well.
He had a story that really drove this home. He was describing how he got kind of squeezed, is the word he used, by a larger prime contractor. They tried to renegotiate his rates mid-contract. Millions of dollars were at stake. And, he was in a really tough spot. But having connections with those elected officials, it gave him leverage. And it really helped ensure a fair outcome for him.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of why those relationships are so important. Larger firms, they often have a much deeper understanding of the rules, and they may try to use that position to kind of, I don't know, maximize their profits, sometimes at the expense of smaller subcontractors. So having those political connections, it can be a real safeguard, especially when you're dealing with, all the complexities of international contracts.
Yeah. So it's not enough to just know the technical stuff, about your project. You've got to have those back channels as well. That can really help level the playing field. Merriweather, he also had a pretty tense way of putting it. He said, business is war.
It does sound a bit dramatic, yeah. But I think, what he's really highlighting is the competitive nature of this field. Especially international development, you're often dealing with limited funding, and there's fierce competition for those contracts.
But he actually cautioned against over-reliance on a single prime contractor or government agency. Makes you really vulnerable to budget cuts, changing priorities, or even some of those unethical practices that he experienced.
For sure. Diversifying that customer base it's essential, both in terms of like the prime contractors you work with and the types of projects you pursue. That's how you mitigate risk and ensure long-term stability for your business.
It's like they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So speaking of finding those diverse opportunities, I mean, where do we even begin? People think, data, that's just for tech companies.
Yeah.
But think again.
Right. I mean, places like the World Bank, USAID, those are like gold mines of information, Their websites have data on current projects, past projects, funding trends, who are the key players. Analyzing this information can help you identify those potential opportunities that really align with your expertise.
Yeah, it's like having a treasure map leading you to those hidden gems. So, okay, so you've identified a potential project.
Yeah.
How do you actually stand out and win the contract?
Right. That's where crafting that compelling proposal comes in. And there's a great YouTube channel, How to Sell to and Win Federal Government Contracts, that has some great advice specifically for subcontractors. And they really emphasize like tailoring your capabilities statement to that specific project and the prime contractor.
Okay. So it's like instead of just having like a generic resume, you're creating a targeted pitch.
Yeah.
That shows how your expertise really fills their gaps and can contribute to their success.
Exactly. You want to highlight your compliance strengths as well. Things like cybersecurity certifications, like CMMC, that demonstrates your commitment to those industry standards. Reassure the primes that you are a reliable and trustworthy partner.
It's like, I don't know, almost like putting a seal of approval on your proposal, right? It shows that you are serious about security, especially in today's world.
Absolutely. And another tip from the YouTube channel, and this is critical, is to really understand the prime's needs and their pain points for the specific project, What challenges are they facing? How can your expertise help them overcome those challenges and achieve those goals?
I love that. It's like shifting from that me-centric approach to a we-centric approach. It's about like really demonstrating that genuine understanding of the prime's perspective and offering those solutions that are tailor-made for their needs.
Yeah, and that brings us to forming those strategic partnerships. Things like teaming agreements and joint ventures, those can be super powerful.
Hmm.
You know, imagine combining your expertise with another organization, going after a project that neither of you could have tackled alone.
Right. And the Intellect webinar, that was a great resource on this. But they also highlighted, some of the potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
How do you make sure these collaborations are mutually beneficial and built on that trust?
Transparency is like the key. You need to define those roles and responsibilities, establish those equitable profit sharing arrangements, make sure there's a shared commitment to compliance as well. Aligning your values and your long-term goals from the beginning, that really sets the stage for a strong, sustainable partnership.
Yeah. It's like building a house together, right?
Yeah.
You need a solid foundation, a shared blueprint, and a clear understanding of who is responsible for what. That's how you avoid like those cracks down the line. Now, let's be real. Contracts are legally binding documents.
Right. And that's where legal expertise comes in. Susan Warshaw and Jody Fetter from the Stinson LLP webinar, they had some great insights about navigating those legal aspects of subcontracting, particularly for government-funded projects.
They were really stressing understanding those key contract clauses, like the ones about intellectual property rights, payment terms, and those kind of dreaded flow-down clauses.
Oh, yeah, flow-down clauses. Basically, they're an extension of that prime contract's terms and conditions down to you, the subcontractor. So you are bound by those same rules and regulations.
So it's like, signing a lease agreement. You really need to understand that fine print and make sure those terms are favorable and they protect your interests.
Exactly. They talked about some of the risks associated with like certain contract types, like time and materials contracts. Those can leave you vulnerable to cost overruns if they are not carefully negotiated.
So, it's not about just like blindly accepting whatever the prime offers, right? It's about understanding those implications, negotiating and protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And even without a legal background, being aware of these kind of common pitfalls, that empowers you to have those more informed conversations with the primes.
For sure. If we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, there's this recurring theme here, right? It's the importance of clear communication and building that trust. And that applies not just to the relationships with elected officials or prime contractors, but your internal processes and documentation as well.
Yeah, it's like creating that culture of transparency and accountability within your own organization. And, that not only mitigates risk, but it builds reputation for you as a reliable professional organization, which, let's face it, is essential in this business.
Now let's talk about pricing strategies, specifically for international development contracts. Marcia Lindquist and Michael Gallo from the Federal Pricing Group really emphasized early and transparent communication with the prime contractors about pricing expectations.
Yeah. And they also highlighted how there isn't like a one-size-fits-all approach. You've got those cost reimbursement contracts, fixed price contracts, time and materials contracts. Each one has its own set of risks and rewards. And, understanding those nuances, it's crucial for both the primes and the subs to avoid those financial headaches down the line.
Yeah. It's, like choosing the right financial instrument for an investment. You need to understand the potential returns, what are the risks, the overall market conditions to make that informed decision.
And they also had some really interesting advice about the negotiation process itself. They cautioned against holding out for the highest possible price because, they said, that could actually damage the relationship and hurt the team's chances of winning the bid.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot, balancing your need to protect your interests, but also with that spirit of collaboration. Because ultimately, a win for the team, including the subcontractors, that's a win for everyone.
And speaking of protecting yourself, we can't forget about compliance. It's not just a box to check, right? It's an ongoing process, especially when you're dealing with these government-funded projects.
The Baker Tilly webinar really drove that home, They emphasized the risks of insufficient subcontractor monitoring, which can lead to some hefty penalties. And of course, it can damage the prime's reputation, which of course impacts you as well.
Right, it's all connected. They also stressed documenting everything, processes, decisions, everything related to the subcontract. Think of it like building a bulletproof case for your actions, ensuring that transparency and accountability every step of the way.
Absolutely. And speaking of accountability, the Baker Tilly experts offered some advice on preparing for audits. Having a designated point person within your organization who's responsible for compliance and audit readiness.
It's like having a designated driver for your audit journey, right? Someone who knows the route, they understand the rules of the road, can ensure a smooth and efficient ride.
Exactly. They emphasize proper documentation, cost allocation, making sure all costs charged to the government are properly documented, supported, and allocated to the right cost objectives.
I always think of it as like meticulously organizing your receipts, categorizing your expenses. When it comes time to reconcile everything, you have all the evidence you need. You can avoid discrepancies, and those red flags that can make an auditor kind of raise an eyebrow.
And beyond preparing for the audits, they stressed ongoing compliance monitoring. Regularly reviewing those processes, identifying potential risks, and implementing corrective actions to make sure you stay on the right side of those regulations.
Yeah, it's like having a regular checkup with your financial doctor, right?
Right.
By catching those potential issues early, you can address them before they become major problems.
And as you navigate this, complex landscape of international development contracts, remember, compliance, it's not just about avoiding penalties. It's about operating with integrity and upholding those ethical standards. It aligns your business practices with your values, and it ensures that your work contributes to those positive and sustainable development outcomes.
Well said. Now, before we kind of dive into a real-world case study, let's take a quick detour. We're going to consider the Canadian government's approach to procurement. You might be thinking, what does Canada have to do with international development contracts?
You might be surprised. There are actually some really striking parallels. They offer valuable insights for contractors operating in any global market.
It's like learning from a neighbor, right,
Yep.
who's already successfully navigated a similar path.
Mhm.
There's this YouTube channel, AI Government Contractor, and they provided a great overview of how to do business with the Canadian government. One key takeaway: meticulous documentation and really adhering to those specific requirements. That's paramount.
Exactly, which, as we've been discussing, aligns perfectly with that emphasis on compliance in international development contracting.
Yeah. They also highlight the importance of like registering your business, obtaining the necessary certifications, the clearances. It's like getting your passport and visa in order before you go on an international trip. It ensures a smoother journey.
And the channel even breaks down a specific solicitation. It was for an Air Cadet Power Pilot training course. They used that as a real-world case study of how to approach those Canadian government bids.
It's like they're giving us like a peek behind the curtain.
No.
They show us that level of detail and the adherence to instructions that's expected.
And it reinforces what we discussed earlier, right?
Yeah.
About understanding the client's needs and tailoring your bid accordingly.
Yeah, it's not about showcasing, everything that you do. It's about highlighting what matters most to that client
Okay.
and demonstrating how you can help them achieve their objectives.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to look at another case study that delves into subcontracting from kind of a different angle. Neil McDonald, he had a LinkedIn Live session, and he provided some fantastic insights into how those smaller organizations can really leverage subcontracting for growth.
Yeah, what I found really valuable is that he has experience on both sides. He's been both a prime contractor and a subcontractor.
It's like getting advice from a seasoned traveler who's explored both the well-trodden paths and the uncharted territories. They can offer those valuable tips on navigating the terrain and maximizing your chances of reaching your destination.
He emphasized understanding the different approaches to subcontracting. You can pursue opportunities on new bids, teaming up with primes to win those contracts, or you can target existing awarded contracts where the primes might need additional support.
It's like choosing between, planting a seed and waiting for it to grow, or grafting onto an existing tree to accelerate your harvest.
He actually advocated for targeting those awarded contracts. He said that's a faster path to revenue generation. By identifying those primes that are already working on projects that align with your expertise, you can position yourself as a valuable resource.
It's about strategically leveraging the momentum of an existing project rather than starting from scratch.
And, like we've been saying, building those relationships, it's key. McDonald really emphasized nurturing those prime contractor relationships, positioning yourself as that reliable and trustworthy partner.
It's about going beyond just fulfilling your contractual obligations. It's about demonstrating a genuine commitment to their success, being proactive, and consistently exceeding expectations. That lays the foundation for long-term collaboration and repeat business.
But he also gave some, I thought, realistic advice about, not putting all your eggs in one basket. He advised smaller organizations to develop their own prime contracting capabilities in parallel, to diversify revenue streams and kind of increase control over their future.
It's like having multiple streams flowing into your river. If one dries up, you've still got others to keep things flowing.
And as you navigate the world of subcontracting, remember, you're not just providing a service, you're building your reputation. How you conduct yourself, how you communicate, how you deliver on those commitments, that will shape how primes perceive you and influence their willingness to work with you in the future.
It's like building a brand. Every interaction, every project, every deliverable, it contributes to the perception of your organization.
Now, let's shift gears and talk about kind of a crucial aspect of subcontracting, and that's effective communication.
We've touched on this a little bit already, but it's worth emphasizing. Effective communication is more than just conveying information. It's about building trust, fostering that collaboration, and preventing those misunderstandings.
Think of it as the glue that holds that entire subcontracting relationship together.
Exactly. Curtis Merriweather, he stressed clear communication channels, protocols from the get-go. Define who's responsible for what. Establish those timelines for deliverables. Agree on how you're going to handle potential issues or conflicts.
Yeah, it's like creating a communication map. It outlines the routes, the landmarks, those emergency procedures.
He also stressed proactive communication. Don't wait for the problems to pop up. Keep the prime informed of your progress, flag potential issues early on, and seek their input on those key decisions.
Yeah, you want to be a good co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
Keep them updated, anticipating those challenges. That makes for a much smoother flight. And it's not just about communicating effectively with the prime, right? It's also about having those clear channels within your own organization.
Right. Everyone on your team needs to understand their roles, their responsibilities, have access to the information they need, know how to escalate those issues if and when they arise.
It's like having a well-coordinated crew on a ship. Everyone knows their position, understands the chain of command, and they work together seamlessly.
And as you navigate those complexities of international development contracts, remember, communication, it's not just about the words, it's about actions, how you respond to those requests, how you meet those deadlines, how you handle those unexpected challenges. That speaks volumes about your organization's professionalism and commitment to that partnership.
It's like showing up on time, dressed appropriately, and following through on those promises. Actions speak louder than words, right?
Absolutely. Now, let's turn our attention to another critical element of subcontracting: risk management.
We've talked about some of the risks. Unfair payment terms, scope creep, compliance issues. But effective risk management, it's more than just identifying those hazards, right? It's about developing strategies to mitigate those risks and minimize their impact.
Think of it as like building a safety net for your project.
The Intellect webinar highlighted thorough due diligence on those potential prime contractors. Review their past performance, check their financial stability, look into their reputation for ethical conduct.
It's like checking the safety record of an airline before booking a flight.
They also recommended carefully reviewing the subcontract itself, especially those clauses about payment terms, intellectual property rights, dispute resolution.
It's like reading the fine print on an insurance policy. You want to understand what is covered, what are the exclusions.
And just as important as managing those external risks is assessing and mitigating those internal risks within your own organization.
Yeah. Having that robust quality control system, a well-defined scope of work, those clear communication channels we talked about, it all plays a role.
It's like having a fire extinguisher, a well-rehearsed evacuation plan in your office. Being prepared for those potential emergencies, that minimizes the damage, and it keeps your team and your assets safe.
And as you navigate the international development landscape, remember, risk, it's just inherent in doing business. But understanding the potential hazards, implementing those proactive mitigation strategies, and fostering that culture of risk awareness within your organization, that can dramatically increase your chances of success.
Now, let's talk about something that often causes anxiety for subcontractors: pricing.
We've talked about, understanding those different pricing models, having that transparent communication about pricing expectations. But negotiating the pricing for those subcontracts, it's a delicate dance. It requires assertiveness, collaboration, and a deep understanding of the value you bring.
It's like negotiating the price of a valuable artwork. You need to know what it's worth, understand the market, and be able to articulate that value to those potential buyers.
Marcia Lindquist and Michael Gallo from the Federal Pricing Group, they offered some great insights into this negotiation process. Understanding your costs and developing a pricing strategy that ensures profitability while staying competitive.
It's like knowing your bottom line and setting a price that covers your expenses while leaving room for profit. Understanding your costs, that allows you to negotiate from a position of strength.
And they recommended researching the market, seeing what other subcontractors are charging for similar services. That helps you kind of benchmark your pricing, make sure you're offering a competitive rate.
It's like comparing prices before making a major purchase. You know, you want to make sure you're getting a fair deal.
And just as important, they stressed clearly articulating the value you bring to the prime contractor. This goes beyond just listing your services. It's about showcasing how your expertise will actually contribute to their success.
It's like crafting a compelling sales pitch, highlighting those benefits, the outcomes,
Yeah.
focusing on the value that you provide. That justifies your price, and it positions you as an investment, not just another expense.
Right. And remember, this pricing negotiation, it's not about getting the absolute highest price. It's about building a sustainable, mutually beneficial relationship.
It's like negotiating a long-term lease agreement. You want both parties to feel like they're getting a fair deal, and that lays the foundation for a strong and lasting partnership.
Now, before we move on, let's come back to a key theme that's been woven through our entire discussion: building trust.
Trust is the foundation of any successful partnership, especially in this, complex world of international development contracts.
Think of trust as the currency of those successful subcontracting relationships.
Curtis Merriweather, he highlighted transparency, honesty, and all interactions with prime contractors, being upfront about your capabilities, your limitations, and any potential challenges that you foresee.
It's like being honest with your doctor about your symptoms. The more information they have, the better equipped they are to help you.
He also emphasized following through on your commitments, meeting deadlines, delivering quality work, and adhering to those subcontract terms.
It's like keeping your promises. Consistency, integrity that builds that reputation for trustworthiness, which is so invaluable in this business.
And it's not just about building trust with those prime contractors. You need to foster that culture of trust within your own organization as well.
Right. Creating an environment where that open communication is encouraged. Mistakes are seen as learning opportunities. And everyone feels valued, respected.
It's like building a supportive and inclusive family. That sense of belonging, mutual respect, that creates a much more cohesive, productive team.
And as you navigate this world of international development, remember, trust. It's earned through consistent actions, a genuine commitment to ethical conduct.
It's like cultivating a garden. It takes patience, nurturing, and that long-term vision. Speaking of long-term vision, let's talk about how technology can give those smaller organizations an edge in this, very competitive market. We've talked about data analysis for market research, but it goes way beyond that.
Technology, think of it as your secret weapon, right? It allows you to work smarter, not harder. The AI Government Contractor YouTube channel, they showcased how artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, can be used to analyze RFPs, understand submission requirements, and even, generate sections of proposals.
It's like having a super efficient virtual assistant, right? They can handle those tedious tasks, freeing you up to focus on strategy, the big picture thinking. It's almost like it levels the playing field, allowing smaller companies to compete with those industry giants.
It has that potential, for sure. And beyond AI, you've got a whole world of technology, cloud-based collaboration platforms, project management software, customer relationship management systems. Embracing technology streamlines those processes, improves efficiency, and ultimately helps you deliver more value.
It's like having a whole suite of digital tools at your disposal. It amplifies your capabilities, extends your reach. Now, as we kind of wrap up this deep dives, there's a big question that often comes up when we discuss international development contracts, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. What about those ethical considerations of profiting from aid-funded projects? It's a sensitive topic, but one that deserves our attention, I think.
It is a complex issue, no doubt. I mean, the goal of international development, it's to alleviate poverty, right? Improve lives, promote that sustainable growth. And it's natural to kind of wonder, how do we reconcile these, altruistic goals with the pursuit of profit?
Right. It can feel contradictory, like you're profiting off of someone else's misfortune, So how do we navigate that ethical gray area?
I think it's important to remember that profit itself isn't inherently a bad thing or unethical. When done right, profit can actually be a powerful engine for positive social impact. Think of it as fuel that powers the vehicle of development. Generating profit allows you to invest in innovation, expand your reach, and ultimately have a greater impact on those communities you're serving.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not about demonizing profit, but rather ensuring it's not the only driver.
Exactly. We need to operate with a sense of purpose, guided by a commitment to those ethical conduct and a genuine desire to contribute to, those positive and sustainable development outcomes. So profit becomes a means to an end, not the end itself.
Yeah, so it's like choosing a destination for your road trip.
Yeah.
Profit might be the gas that gets you there, but it's that destination itself that truly matters.
Right. And Curtis Merriweather touched on this when he talked about aligning your business practices with your values. He encouraged contractors to see themselves as agents of change,
Yeah.
contributing to that larger mission of improving lives, creating a more equitable world. It's about seeing your work as more than just a job. It's about making a real difference.
Yeah. It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where your passion meets purpose and profit. And that brings us back to the idea of transparency and accountability. The Intellect webinar, they really emphasize that.
Absolutely. Operating with integrity and adhering to those ethical standards, it builds trust with the donors, partners, the communities you serve. It's about ensuring every dollar invested in development is being used effectively, efficiently. You're maximizing the impact, minimizing the risk of waste or corruption.
It's about doing business the right way, not just the easy way. So as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. You have the power to choose how you conduct your business in this field. You can prioritize profit above all else, or you can embrace a more holistic approach that balances that financial success with ethical conduct and a commitment to social impact.
It's like choosing a path through a forest, right? You can take that shortcut, focusing solely on reaching that destination as quickly as possible, or you can take the scenic route, appreciate the beauty of the surroundings, and leave a lighter footprint.
And with that, we'll wrap up part 1 of our deep dive into winning international development contracts.
Yeah, it's about choosing a path that aligns your, pursuit of profit with a purpose that goes beyond just financial gain,
Right.
Contributing to a world where prosperity isn't just about economic success, but it's a reflection of human well-being and sustainable development.
It's like choosing to climb a mountain, not just for the view from the top, but for the challenge, the personal growth that comes along the way. So as you embark on this journey into the world of international development contracts, it's not just about winning contracts, it's about winning the right way.
It's about building a business that thrives not just financially, but ethically, and leaves a positive, lasting impact on the world.
Well said. Now let's shift gears a bit. Talk about something that can cause a lot of anxiety for subcontractors, and that's pricing. It's such a delicate dance. You need assertiveness and collaboration and this deep understanding of your value proposition.
You've got to know your worth, understand the market, and then be able to articulate that value to the prime contractor. Think of it like negotiating, like the price of a valuable piece of art. You wouldn't just, accept the first offer, would you?
Definitely not. So where do we even begin?
Marcia Lindquist and Michael Gallo from the Federal Pricing Group, they offered some really, really valuable insights. They emphasized understanding your costs, developing a pricing strategy that ensures profitability. But you also have to stay competitive.
So it's like knowing your bottom line, right? And setting a price that covers those expenses but leaves room for profit.
Exactly. And they recommend researching the market, seeing what other subcontractors are charging for similar services. This helps you benchmark your pricing and make sure you're not undervaluing your expertise.
Like comparison shopping, right? Before you make a big purchase, you want to make sure you're getting a fair deal. But it's not just about matching the competition. It's about, showcasing why you're worth it.
Right, absolutely. Lindquist and Gallo, they emphasize clearly articulating the value that you bring to the prime contractor. This goes beyond just like listing your services, your capabilities. It's about showing how your expertise will contribute to their success, how you will help them deliver that winning solution.
It's like you're crafting a compelling sales pitch, right? Highlighting the benefits, the outcomes of what you offer, focusing on the value that you bring, that justifies your price. And it positions you as an investment, not just another expense.
Exactly. And remember, the pricing negotiation, it's not about getting the absolute highest price possible. It's about building that sustainable, mutually beneficial relationship with the prime contractor.
Yeah. It's like negotiating a long-term lease agreement. You want to make sure both parties are happy with the terms and they feel like they're getting a fair deal.
Right. It's about finding that win-win solution. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, let's kind of circle back to a theme that we've been talking about throughout our conversation. Building trust.
Yeah. It's the bedrock of any successful partnership, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Especially in the world of international development contracts. It's so complex.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, think of trust as the currency of those successful subcontracting relationships.
Yeah. And Curtis Merriweather talked about transparency and honesty in all those interactions, with the prime contractors. Being upfront about what you can do, your limitations, and any potential challenges that you might, foresee.
It's like being honest with your doctor about your symptoms. The more information they have, the better equipped they are to help you.
And he emphasized, following through on those commitments that you make. Meeting deadlines, delivering quality work, adhering to those subcontract terms.
It's like keeping your promises, When you consistently demonstrate that reliability, integrity, you build that reputation, that trustworthiness, which is just so valuable in this business.
Yeah, and it's not just about building that trust with the prime contractors. It's also about fostering a culture of trust within your own organization as well.
Oh, for sure. You want to create an environment where people feel comfortable communicating openly, Mistakes are seen as learning opportunities, not something to be punished for, and where everyone feels valued, respected.
Yeah, it's like building a supportive and inclusive family.
Yeah.
Everyone feels like they belong, and they're all working towards that common goal.
And as you navigate this world of international development, remember, trust is earned. It's earned through consistent actions, a genuine commitment to ethical conduct.
It's like cultivating a garden, right?
I see.
It takes patience, nurturing, and a long-term vision. Speaking of long-term vision, let's talk about technology and how that can give those smaller organizations a real edge in this competitive market. We talked about data analysis for, market research, but it goes way beyond that.
Technology. Think of it as your secret weapon. It allows you to work smarter, not harder. The AI Government Contractor RootTube channel, they showcase how artificial intelligence like ChatGPT can be used to analyze those RFPs, understand the submission requirements, and even generate sections of proposals.
It's like having a super efficient virtual assistant, right? They can handle all those tedious tasks, and that frees you up to focus on strategy, big picture thinking. It's almost like leveling the playing field, allowing smaller companies to compete with those industry giants.
Yeah, it has that potential for sure. And beyond AI, there's a whole world of technology out there. Cloud-based collaboration platforms, project management software, customer relationship management systems, embracing technology, it streamlines those processes. It improves your efficiency, and ultimately it helps you deliver more value.
Yeah. It's like having a whole suite of digital tools at your disposal.
Yeah.
It amplifies your capabilities, extends your reach. Now, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, there's this important question that we need to address. It's kind of the elephant in the room. What about the ethical considerations of profiting from these aid-funded projects? I mean, it's a sensitive topic, but one that I think deserves our attention.
It is a complex issue, no doubt. I mean, the goal of international development, it's to alleviate poverty, improve lives, promote sustainable growth. And it's natural to wonder, how do we reconcile these altruistic goals with the pursuit of profit?
Right. It can feel contradictory. Like, are we profiting off of someone else's misfortune? So how do we navigate that ethical, gray area?
Well, I think it's important to remember that profit itself, it's not inherently bad or unethical when it's done right. Profit can be a powerful engine for positive social impact. Think of it as the fuel that powers the vehicle of development. Generating profit allows us to invest in innovation, expand our reach, and ultimately have a greater impact on the communities we serve.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's not about demonizing profit, but it's about ensuring that it's not the sole driver of our actions.
Exactly. We need to operate with a sense of purpose, guided by that commitment to ethical conduct and a genuine desire to contribute to those, positive, sustainable development outcomes. Profit becomes a means to an end, not the end itself.
Yeah, so it's like choosing the destination, right?
Yeah.
For a road trip, profit might be the gas that gets you there.
Yeah.
But it's that destination itself that truly matters.
Yeah, Curtis Merriweather touched on this, when you talk about aligning your business practices with your values. He encouraged contractors to see themselves as agents of change, contributing to that larger mission, improving lives, creating a more equitable world. It's about seeing your work as more than just a job. It's about making a real difference.
Yeah. It's about finding that sweet spot where your passion meets purpose and profit. And that kind of brings us back to that idea of transparency and accountability. The Intellect webinar really emphasized that.
Absolutely. Operating with integrity, adhering to those ethical standards, it builds trust. With the donors, the partners, the communities you serve, it's about ensuring every dollar invested in development is used effectively, efficiently. You're maximizing that impact, minimizing the risk of waste or corruption.
It's about doing business the right way, not just the easy way. So why don't we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive? I want to leave our listeners with this thought. You have the power to choose how you conduct your business in this field. You can prioritize profit above all else. Or you can embrace a more, holistic approach that balances that financial success with ethical conduct and a commitment to social impact.
It's like choosing a path through a forest, right? You can take that shortcut, focusing solely on reaching that destination as quickly as possible. Or you can take the scenic route, appreciate the beauty of the surroundings, and leave a lighter footprint.
And with that, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into winning international development contracts. Welcome back to the deep dive. In this final part, we're going to distill everything we've learned into, actionable advice that you can use to actually win those international development contracts.
Yeah. We've covered a lot. We talked about political relationships, market research, those strategic partnerships, legal considerations, pricing strategies, ethical conduct, the power of technology. It's a lot to take in.
It is. It is. But you don't have to do it all at once.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Start by focusing on your strengths and then identifying, those areas where you could maybe improve.
Yeah, maybe you're already great at writing proposals, but you need to work on your compliance procedures.
Or maybe you've got that solid network of prime contractors, but you're not quite leveraging data effectively to find those new opportunities.
Right. But the point is, no matter where you're starting from, there are always steps that you can take to become more competitive, to increase those chances of winning those contracts. So let's recap some of those key takeaways. Remember Curtis Merriweather's advice about those relationships with elected officials.
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive, but those connections, they can be so valuable. They give you that top cover when you're navigating like those complex international regulations or even facing those unfair practices from, those bigger firms.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of data. The World Bank, USAID, those are like gold mines,
Oh, yeah. Use them to identify potential projects, understand those funding trends, get to know the major players in the international development space.
So you've identified those opportunities. What's next?
Well, then it's time to craft that winning proposal.
Right. And remember, it's not about showcasing everything you can do. It's about demonstrating how your unique expertise can fill those gaps, for the prime. And contribute to their overall success.
Highlight your compliance strengths. Things like cybersecurity certifications. Those build trust. Reassure those primes that you're a reliable partner.
Right. And we talked about those strategic partnerships, teaming agreements, joint ventures.
Those can be so powerful. They help you go after larger projects, more complex projects that you couldn't handle by yourself.
Right. But make sure those partnerships are built on that foundation of transparency, clearly defined roles, and a shared commitment to, compliance.
And when you're negotiating those subcontracts, remember to protect your own interests,
Understand those key clauses, the flow-down clauses, the payment terms, the intellectual property rights.
Don't be afraid to negotiate, terms that are favorable to your business, and get that legal counsel if you need it.
Now let's talk about pricing. I know it's a sticking point for a lot of subcontractors, but remember, you bring value to the table.
Know your costs, research the market, and be really clear about the value that you provide to that prime contractor.
Yeah. Don't undersell yourself.
Yeah.
But also be, collaborative, reasonable during that negotiation.
Remember, a win for the team is a win for everyone involved.
And throughout this whole process, just always keep those ethical considerations at the top of your mind.
Operate with integrity, be transparent, and make sure that your work contributes to those positive and sustainable development outcomes.
And finally, don't forget about technology.
Embrace those digital tools. They can streamline your operations, enhance your efficiency, and give you a competitive edge.
So whether it's AI or project management software, cloud-based collaboration platforms, technology can be a real game changer, especially for those smaller organizations.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, Remember, winning those international development contracts, it's a multifaceted challenge. It takes a lot.
Yeah. Technical expertise. You need the strategic thinking, the relationship building, a commitment to ethical conduct.
But for those who are willing to put in the effort, the rewards, they can be pretty significant, both
Yeah.
financially and in terms of that positive impact that you can have on the world.
So go out there, leverage what you've learned and make your mark on the international development landscape.
We're here to support you every step of the way. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
And that's it for this deep dive into winning international development contracts.